Hey guys, MovieFan here to bring you a brand new Cosplay Tuesday. And this one is going to be extra special because for the first time, I'm doing something that, to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever done before. Because I'm creating the Dragozord Spear. Now, I've seen a lot of pictures of people who had dressed up as Dragozord's fighting mode, but I've never seen anyone ever try to create the spear. And I want to be the first. And so I did it. Now, to get started on this project, you're going to need the following supplies: cardboard, PVC pipe, 90-degree PVC elbows, a 5-way PVC connector, a Fiskars wheel, a utility knife, a ruler, scissors, hot glue, black duct tape, green duct tape, gray duct tape, yellow duct tape, and red duct tape. Now, before we get started, I want to explain something. If you're familiar with the Dragozord Spear, you would know that it has the ability to stand on its own. And I wanted that for this model. And in order to do that, I would have to go for more structural strength. So I could not rely on cardboard alone. That is why we have PVC. Now, for me, I used 1.5-inch PVC because I have a ton of it at home. But I do believe that if you use 1-inch PVC pipe, it'll probably serve you pretty well. But like I said, I had the 1.5-inch stuff lying around, so I just took advantage of it. Now, first what you got to do is you got to measure out how high you want it to stand, because a key thing is you want the stand to be only a certain amount of height to accommodate for everything. And of course, you need to take into account that the drill at the tip of the spear, you want to make sure that's not going to be hitting stuff like your ceiling or something. It took a lot of figuring, but I determined that the proper height I needed was 74-inch. So that part was easy. The hard part was trying to figure out how to make the feet stand out. I thought of all kinds of ways to do it, like cutting and bending PVC pipe and all that, but I came across some pretty big problems. Like, for instance, one, if you look at the picture, they're triangular in shape, so that wouldn't work. However, I did find a simple solution. I looked online and I found that they have these 5-way PVC connections. So I bought one off of eBay. If you got your 5-way piece, what you want to do is do some serious measuring. Now, this might differ for you, but for me, I found it best to have the legs extend 5 inches in length and to have the bottom part stand 5 inches tall. What you want to do next is cut 4 pieces of PVC pipe to 3 inches in length. This will be the bottom part of your staff. After that, you want to cut 4 pieces exactly 2 inches in length. These will be the long parts of your staff. After you cut your pieces, fit them inside your 90-degree elbows. And when you're done, put the little pieces into your 5-way piece and see how it looks. The idea is that the elbows are going to look like they're attached to the 5-way piece. And of course, while you're at it, you might want to check and see if it's level. If you got a spare level, that really helps too. After that, grab some super glue and glue it together. And be sure you get it perfectly straight when you get it on there, because you won't have a second chance to do this. Now, of course, when you're done with your base, you need to come up with a pole. Now, the trick is figuring out how tall you want it, because, it depends where you live, if you got a low ceiling, or if you got enough space at all. For me, the proper height was 5 feet, or 60 inches if you prefer. Okay, now we got the structure taken care of, now we're going to do the cosmetic side, starting with the feet. What you do here is get yourself some pieces of cardboard and cut them to 5.5 inches wide and 16 inches long. Once you got them to the right length you want, find dead center and put a big line right down the middle. After that, grab your ruler again and taper the bottom piece to a point. Then cut off those little tips, and then grab your utility knife and gently score the line down the center, and then bend the cardboard. Next, you'll want to mark 8 inches on the cardboard and draw a tapered line just like you did in the bottom, and then cut it off. And by doing this, you will have created the bottom part of the leg of the staff and the top part at the same time. After that, you'll want to get some small pieces of cardboard and cut them to 2.5 inches in width. Next, cut a small angle at the bottom, line it up with the bottom of the foot, and be sure to taper it just where it meets, and then duct tape it together. Repeat the process 7 more times. Now, when you get to the top pieces, we're going to have to do something a little different. In order for them to bend properly, we have to taper them a little. And how we do it is by simply cutting off this much. At least that's how I did it. However, along the way, I realized that there's a simpler way to do this. All I had to do is get a piece of the top and the bottom that I had created and to make a template and copy it. Unfortunately, when I came to that conclusion, it was too late, so they were already done. However, I'm going to make this easy on you because I'm going to give you the templates. Here we got the top, and here we got the bottom. Now, as you can see, I folded them, and if you look carefully, there is a line. Basically, all you got to do is just copy these templates out and just make a nice little slit down on the cardboard when you're ready. That's all you're going to have to do. I'll put the link below so you can find it. Now, when I scanned them, I realized that they were reflecting too much light, so I had to put a color piece of paper behind it so you can get it. All you got to do is just cut it out and, just trace and follow. That's all you got to do. I recommend that you print this in regular letter size. That would be 8 by 11. That's probably the best way. Now, you may have to trim the edges a little just to make it fit a little better, but either way, this will do so much better than trying to fiddle with separate pieces like that. Now we can start adding the color to the feed itself. Now what I did was I grabbed a triangle from my old Protractor kit. I believe this is called a right triangle. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, I grabbed this particular triangle and lined it up with the bottom like this. I drew a line on that side, and then I did the same for the other side. Then I just grabbed the duct tape and placed it right within the lines so we make a nice even diamond shape. And next I want to finish the center. But in order to do that, I need to fold the piece around the pipe. So I did that. I folded it around the pipe. I put a little masking tape on there to keep it in place. You could use a spherical piece of duct tape too, whatever works. After you tape that piece right onto the pipe, just grab another gray piece of duct tape and put it right on the center. Mold it around the bottom like so, and just grab your utility knife and cut off the top edge, and there you have the gray part of the foot. Okay, after that, take the foot piece off of the pipe, then grab your top piece, line them up, and duct tape them together, and then cover the rest of the cardboard with black duct tape. Again, I recommend that when you do the centerpiece, just carefully tape it to the pipe just like before, and finish it off. Repeat the process 4 more times. And now we attach our feet to our PVC legs. And we got to do this in several steps, so pay close attention. Label each one of the legs on the back. 1, 2, 3, and 4 will do nicely. Grab your first leg and fold it right around the PVC, just the way you want it, and mark the PVC where the cardboard ends, like so. Be sure to do both sides. Once you do that, label that part number 1. Repeat the process until you've got it all the way around. When you're done, it should look like this. After that, grab your hot glue gun, put a good amount of glue on either side of the PVC pipe. We're going to start with number 1. Grab your leg that's labeled number 1 and fold it around the PVC. Make sure it matches up with the lines as close as possible. And most importantly, make sure the gray edge is touching the ground where it looks like regular feet. Hold it there for a few minutes, and if you have C-clamps, I suggest you use that as well. It really helps. Repeat the process until you covered all 4 legs. Now we need to do one more thing before we move on, and that's put the back on the legs. Now what I did was I got the legs on a small piece of PVC pipe and I put the pipe in a vise and held it upside down like this. Once I got it in place, I just grabbed a small piece of cardboard and I just drew down the lines where the back of the legs meet. After that, you gotta try to draw a half circle on the bottom. Fortunately for me, I had a 3-way piece left over from an earlier project, but if you got a small piece of PVC around, I would recommend doing that. What I did was I got my 3-way piece and put it right there on the bottom. You want to center it where it meets the middle of the pipe. Trace around it and then cut the circle out. After that, you want to test it to make sure you got it right. And that looks good to me. So I'll mark the top pieces where they end up right there. Just put a little mark there and then cut the square off. Next, grab some black duct tape and cover the circle. Be sure to have the tape stick out from either end. That's important. After that, grab your utility knife and cut the circle out. Then cover the rest of it with black duct tape and then just stick it in place and tape it all down. Repeat the process 3 more times. After you do that, just cover the exposed white area with black duct tape. Okay, now that we got the legs covered, we need to be able to cover the top of the legs exactly. What I did was I cut out 3 circles that measured 6.5 inches from end to end. After I cut those out, I put a circle in the center. And from the center to the edge, that should measure 3.5 inches on all sides. Next, what you want to do is grab yourself a thin piece of cardboard about an inch in width. Try and get a long piece if you can. If you can't, you can always add more. What you want to do is you want to cut it horizontally. That way the perforations go up and down. Once you cut it to size, grab your utility knife and cut right in between the perforations, just like this. When you do that, you can bend the entire cardboard just like this. After that, grab your hot glue gun and glue them into place. How I did it was I grabbed a spare piece of PVC, put the circles on there, and just got the glue and glued it all around. Next, cut 4 triangles that are 7 inches long and roughly 5.5 inches in width. I made a template so I would get it right the first time. So when I did this, I got the template and I put it where the perforations go up, like so. After I cut them out, I grabbed a piece of dowel and I curved all the perforations around. Once I did it for all 4, I glued them all into place, one next to the other. Then I covered the entire thing with duct tape. After that, slide your piece back onto the PVC and set it right on top of the legs to see how it looks. When you're satisfied with that, mark the PVC pipe with a black marker. Now that we're done with the feet, we're going to move on to the shield. Now, we're doing this because in order to determine where everything needs to go, you need to have the pipe removable. That way you can make sure you got everything just where you want it before you fully commit yourself. Now, this one I had some trouble trying to figure out the perfect circle for the job. I've tried all kinds of tricks that I've dug up online. I've cut out a whole bunch of triangles and glued them together. That didn't work for me because it was either too big, too small, flimsy, lopsided, all kinds of things. So I fell back on an old trick I picked up some years ago. What I did was I grabbed a very big mixing bowl. I cut out a series of triangles earlier. I connected the triangles on 4 parts, and then I filled in the rest with other various size triangles. I had to cut as I went along. There was really no other way to do it. But basically, that's what I did. Next, what I did was I had 3 circles. One I got from a thing that I bought some time back, and I had saved that circle. It proved to be the perfect size, so I just put it in there and glued it in place with the hot glue. The second one, I kind of cut that one earlier for another project and realized it was too big, so I cut another circle. That's why it looks like a big ring. But anyway, it proved to be the perfect size for the middle, so I just glued that one in place as well. The third one, I made a makeshift compass. I cut it to the size I wanted it and glued it in place. I did learn that I might have made it a little bit smaller than I should have, but you know what? That was all right. It worked for me because the edges weren't completely even when I made it. So that worked in my favor. All I had to do next was grab the utility knife and just cut them off. And here you have a basic dome, which is going to be the shield. All right, now that we made the dome, we're going to have to move on to some accessories. And we're going to start with the bottom piece, which sits right underneath it, which I like to call the morpher because, well, it's shaped just like the morpher. So, hence the name. Now, this one proved to be a little difficult because the real trick was trying to get the symmetry right, which I stink at. I'm not going to lie, I stink. But I did my best, and I created a template for it. Now, it's not exactly perfect, I'm not going to lie here, but it is pretty good, and I think it'll help you guys out too. Basically, what I did was I created this template here, and as you can see, I drew some lines showing exactly where to put some cut marks. Now, with the template, you want to cut the center piece out. It's important. What I did was I used a template and cut 3 of these morphers out. One piece is for the back. The only thing I did with that is I just cut it out and I drew in the center. That'll be important to line it up as we go along. The second piece will sit right in front of the back piece. As you can see, I traced the diamond shape in the center and drew the lines where they meet at the corners. And the third piece, as you can see, is just like the template itself. That one is going to be an extra layer that we will use to give it a certain look. You'll see in a minute. Now that we got our templates ready, first what we want to do is grab our front piece, and we're going to cut the lines that we drew all the way to the diamond shape. However, for the 2 side pieces that are shaped like triangles, we're going to stop just a little bit short of that point because, well, if you don't do that, it'll cut right off at the tip, and then you're going to be stuck with a real problem there. So you want to stop just maybe about, I don't know, maybe half an inch short. It's really up to you, but as long as you don't make it where they connect, you should be all right. Anyway, you want to cut through, and then we just bend them down like this. Next, you want to cut out 5 cardboard pieces that are exactly 1.5 inches thick. What we're going to do is we're going to put them right in the center of the back piece. Once you got them cut out, just glue them right onto the back piece, and after it's dry, glue them right onto the front piece. Of course, you'll want to carefully line up your front piece and gently push it down so it'll hold. Then after it dries, fold your side pieces down onto the back and glue them in place. There's a good chance that you may have to trim them as you go along. That way they'll stay flush and not overlap in a weird sort of way. Next, we'll grab our third piece and cut out every one of the triangles and rectangles. Be sure to label them, that way you'll know where you need to put them. After that, we put a good amount of glue on each piece and put them into place. Now, as you can see, by having these pieces on the way they are, it gives a raised edge to the center, and it makes the seams in the morpher just really pop, and that's exactly what you want. Now we come to the tricky part in making this morpher, and that would be making that iconic letter Z for Zyuranger in the center of the morpher. Well, there's really no pattern or template available, so I had to draw it freehand on a spare piece to test it, and it came out pretty awesome, I would say. And once I was satisfied with that, I cut out a little template for it. Don't worry, I'm going to give it to you. Carefully trace the template onto a piece of cardboard. Be sure to label which side is the top and which is the bottom. Then cut it out. After you do that, carefully line it up in the centerpiece and trace it there. The idea is to make sure you get it right the first time, so you don't want to glue it just yet. Instead, you want to make sure it's right where you want it. And then get your glue gun ready and glue it into place. Now, I'm sure you may notice the back of our morpher sticks out from the front of the morpher. Well, that's just a little hazard that I was counting on when I first did this. So I'm not too shocked about it, and it's a real easy fix. All you got to do is just grab your trusty utility knife and cut off the excess. Okay, now that we made our morpher, we need to do that lower part that sits right underneath it. This proved to be a little tricky because, as you could tell, the piece sits literally just underneath the Z and is attached to the morpher in the bottom part. So I made a special little piece that'll sit right on the morpher itself, right about here. This will sit on the morpher on the back like so. And this will sit on the bottom and it'll just go straight. What you do is take the template, cut 2 pieces out, and glue one side right here and the other side right here. Next, cut yourself out a rectangular piece. I made a template for you to speed it along because it'll follow the curve exactly. But a key thing, though, when you cut this out, you want to make sure the perforations are side to side. That way, it'll just roll down. After you cut it out, you want to roll it out like I suggested, and then glue it into place. Of course, you'll need a small back piece for the back right there. You could use the same template. All you gotta do is just make it a little shorter. Cut it out, glue it into place, and now our morpher is basically complete in design. But before we can do anything else, we'll have to move up to the dome itself once again. Now, as you may have noticed, there are some shapes on there that kind of look like they're riveted on. Well, I made a template just for that, and what I did was I cut out 4 pieces. Of course, what you want to do is grab them by the side and just roll them along like that, and then glue them into place. Now, I'm sure you may notice that the bottom edges here are not completely flush with the edge of the dome itself, but I think it works better this way, and actually it's a little more accurate, because if you pay close attention to the picture here, the edges of those particular pieces stop just at the edge of the dome itself. So it's a little more accurate by comparison. Granted, it may have a little more curve appeal than it should, but I think it works for this. Now that we did that, we need to have the center of the dome stand out a little bit more. What I did was I cut out 8 triangles and I just glued them in place. It'll give it a little bit more structure, and it'll certainly help with the next part. All right, now we come to the part that I like to call the upper crest. And that would be those protrusions that stick up right from the top and go sideways. Now, that one proved to be very difficult because of the design. However, I've created 2 templates. One for the back, as you can see, and one for the front. Don't worry, they're labeled, so can't miss them. And there's a particular reason why they're done like this, because obviously this one's going to be in the back, and this one is going to be in the front. And how it works is like this. I got my templates, I traced them out on cardboard. I glued the back piece to the back, right along the edge of the shield. I waited for that to dry, and then I grabbed my front piece and I glued it to the front, right about here. In case you're wondering about the distance between the back and the front, they are 2 inches and 3/4 apart. And the real trick here is trying to line them up just perfectly where they look like they go flush with each other. Considering where the front piece sits, obviously it's going to be down lower, but you want that because it looks great that way. And I don't have any tips or tricks. The only way to do it is to do it. Once you let the glue dry for about a day or two, cut yourself out 2 bottom pieces. I already made some templates for you for that, and glue them in like this. Now we're going to cover the side corners. Again, I made a template for you. Just copy it twice and line them up like this. One personal note. One's going to face one direction and the other is going to face the opposite direction. So try and line them up the best you can. They should line up like this when you're ready to glue. Now all we need to do is make the top piece for that. And it's really quite simple. All you got to do is cut out a real long piece that is exactly 2 3/4 of an inch in width. When you do that, set it on the top and just line it up carefully and just mark off the end pieces like this, cut it off, and then glue it into place. All right, now all you have to do is create the 5 triangles that sit right in the center of the shield. And I'm really using the word triangles rhetorically here because, well, truth be told, they are not truly triangles. In fact, as you may have noticed, there is a circle in the center and 5 all around. So obviously to call them triangles is a little false. This proved to be a little bit more difficult because trying to make 5 triangles equal, well, I've never been good at doing stuff like that, as I'm sure you've already figured out by now. So I came up with a simple solution. I drew and cut out a circle that was exactly 6 inches all the way around. I crumpled it up a little, just rolling it one side and then the other. Then I just glued it right in place, and it came out even better than I hoped. Next, you want to create the circles themselves. Now, this proved to be a little difficult because it's a matter of determining how big you want the circles. However, by a lot of trial and error, I found out that the right size that I wanted was basically the size of the circle on this spool of thread. So basically what I did was I just put it on a piece of cardboard and traced it 6 times, and then I cut it out. Now before we can put the circles in, we need to work on a part that I like to call the green piece. As you can see, it sits right at the very top of the shield, but it also extends all the way down to the centerpiece. And because of the green stripes, that's why I call it the green piece. What I did was I created a special template so it'll sit right there on the shield properly. All you gotta do is just trace it out twice and cut it out. After that, you want to make a long piece that's going to sit right in the center. I have a template for that as well, so it's already measured out. Now the key thing here is, just like with some of the other things we've done so far, when you cut that middle piece out, you want all the perforations to go horizontal, not vertical. After you cut all this out, you grab yourself a dowel or a pencil or something, and you're going to bend all the perforations going up. Next, get your hot glue gun, grab a side piece, put it on the bottom half, and then just glue the centerpiece into place right there. Do the same for the other side, and then glue a little bit more on either piece up the center to just about to when you come close to the curve where it's going to go the other direction. Roughly to about here, because at this point it's going to go the opposite direction. Let that dry a little, and then just roll the middle piece the other direction, and then glue it into place all the way up, and then just glue the very tops and flip the middle piece over. Be sure to fill in the back of it with a piece of cardboard. There's no template for it. You just have to grab some cardboard and just cut it to shape. That's all. Once it was dry, I grabbed the piece and I set it right on the shield. And I determined that it's covering the center circle a little too much. So I just cut a half circle in it with my box cutter. Once I was satisfied with that, all I had to do was just glue it into place. Okay, now that that's done, we could put the circles in. Now this one proved to be an interesting little challenge because obviously you got to have the circles on the outside stand out, because as you can plainly see here, they got a little edge around them, which kind of says that they're covered by, metal or something. While on the inside, it's more sunk into the center. Now, you could try to cut out the center circle and put that in there, but I didn't think that was necessary. So what I did was I found the center and glued a circle in place. As for the rest of them, I put them in the places where they should go. Once I was satisfied with that, I just marked where they were. Then I grabbed some cardboard, measured it to 1/2 inch in width, and cut it from there. And of course, I got my trusty utility knife and cut between the perforations. You could just glue it around each circle and cut it as you go. After that, I grabbed one circle and glued it onto the top. Now for the 4 remaining circles, you can't just glue them into place because, as I'm sure you can already tell, when they sit there, they sit at an angle, and that won't do. So what you do is you grab your utility knife once again and cut off about half of it to about here. Be very careful when you do this. Repeat the process 4 more times and glue each one of them into place. And now we're going to put some finer details on the upper pieces. Now it looks good the way it is, but as you can tell by the picture, there's kind of a ridge on the top and on the sides and the bottom. So basically, we're just going to do that. All you got to do is grab some cardboard, measure 1/2 inch in width, and cut it from there. Repeat the process a few more times just to make sure you have enough. Be sure to start with some long pieces, by the way, and place it on top of one of the upper decorations like this. Mark it in back, cut it off with a pair of scissors or utility knife, then glue it into place. Do the same for the bottom part, and then just grab what you got left and place it onto the side there, and just cut it to shape and glue it into place. Repeat the process 1 more time and you'll have your edges in place. Now we need to put 2 edges on the green piece on the top. We grab a piece of cardboard, measure it to 13 inches long and cut it. Then we measure out 2 long narrow strips 1/2 inch in width and cut them out. Then we just mold them around like so. Now since this is 13 inches long, it's going to be a little longer. So all you got to do is just find where it ends and just cut it off with the scissors because we're going to stop it right at the top. Next, grab some hot glue and glue them both into place. Okay, now we come to the 3 sections of the tail, or as I like to call them, the drums. You'll see why in a little bit. Now, for this one, it depends on how big you want it. Obviously, we need the smallest one to reach all the way up to the tip of the pipe, and the biggest one to reach all the way to the top of the shield. The trick is figuring out where to do it. Now, it took some careful measuring. I had to measure it multiple times to find the ideal height for me, because for each one of these drums, they're going to be a different height, for the obvious reasons. For me, I found that the ideal size would be that the bottom one would be 8 inches and 3/4, while the middle one will be 7 inches and 1/4, and the top piece would be 6 inches and 3/8. Or you could use a nice whole number, whatever works for you. And one important note, with these drums, you're going to have a 1-inch gap between them, which we will fill in with a separate piece altogether. Anyhow, once you determine the heights of your drums, you want to mark exactly where you want them to end up. Obviously, with the bottom piece, we want to mark that, and then, of course, the middle and the top. And then we're ready to get started on our drums. Now, the trick to making these drums is you got to make them into a perfect cylinder. And, of course, they have to be small, medium, and large. Well, just by sheer luck, I happen to have a few pot tops that I've been storing for a long time, and they were just what I needed. So I just grabbed the small, the medium, the large, and I traced each one of them 3 times. Then I cut them out. Of course, you might want to keep them in just for the time being because you got to find dead center on all the pieces. Because obviously in order for this to work, the pole is going to have to go right through the center. What I did was I grabbed a small piece of PVC that I had lying around that was the same size, of course, and I carefully maneuvered it to dead center. How I did that was I just basically put it there and I grabbed my carpenter's square and I measured on 4 points to see if they were even on all sides. When they were, I traced a circle around the PVC, then I cut it out. I recommend doing this with the small size piece first. That way you can easily cut out the piece and trace it onto the other 3. And after that, you can use the small pieces and trace onto the medium sized pieces like so. All you got to do is basically put it in the middle, grab your carpenter's square, and judge it on all 4 sides like I mentioned earlier. Once they all line up, draw the circle in the center. And you just repeat this process until you get all the pieces for your medium, and your large. And after you cut them out, you want to check them to make sure they get on there right. Just slip them onto the pole to see how it looks, and this looks pretty darn good, so I'm satisfied with that. So now we move on to the most important part, and that would be the outer shell. What you want to do is cut yourself some cardboard pieces to the exact sizes that you need for your top, center, and bottom pieces. Because remember, they're going to be at different heights. If you don't remember the heights right now, here they are again. The bottom one would be 8 inches and 3/4, while the middle one will be 7 inches and 1/4, and the top piece would be 6 inches and 3/8. Or you could use a nice whole number, whatever works for you. You'll probably have to use 2 pieces, that way you can cover the entire thing. Now that we got them all cut out, we're going to roll them. And this is actually pretty simple. What you want to do is grab your trusty utility knife and carefully cut a straight line between the perforations on the cardboard. You'll have to do this from beginning to end. That way it'll make a smooth curve all the way around. After you do that, get your hot glue gun ready and glue the bottom piece in like so. Wait a few minutes to let it dry and harden. Then do the middle piece and then do the top piece. Once they're cooled off enough, just continue the process until it goes all the way around. And then get your second piece and glue it from edge to edge and keep going until they meet. Now, most likely it's going to overlap a little, and that's okay. So what you want to do is carefully roll it over, get your scissors, and cut it right on the perforation, and then glue it in place. And there you have a perfect cylinder, or a drum, if you will. Repeat the process for the other 2 sizes, and you'll have 3 drums. Now we got our drums finished, we're going to create our 1-inch pieces that are going to go between the drums. Now we're going to apply the exact same process here. However, we're going to need 2 very different sizes to go between the bottom and the centerpiece, and then from the centerpiece to the top piece. And obviously it's going to have to be small in between those spaces. Obviously I can't use the pot tops again, so I had to find something else. In this case, I found that a medium-sized plate was perfect for the piece that was going to go between the bottom and the center. And a little candy dish was perfect for the piece that was going to go between the center and the top. Now with these pieces, they're not going to be as big as the drums, so you only need to make 2. So I just traced them out, made some circles in the center, cut 1-inch strips of cardboard, cut into the perforations, and just like before, we glue it together, and there you have your centerpieces. Okay, now we're going to work on the decorations for the drums. You might remember them. That's those green and yellow parts on the side that stick out by about 1 inch or 2. What I do is I made some special triangular pieces for all 3. All you got to do is trace out 4 of each size and cut them to shape. And you just got to cut out 2 long strips of cardboard to the right width and height that you need. Don't worry, I made templates for that too that you can find. 2 times for each size, by the way. And once again, you'll want to cut it where the perforations in the cardboard are horizontal, not vertical. Once you cut that out, just roll them over with a pencil or a dowel or your fingers, whatever works for you, and just glue them onto the pieces like so. After that, just grab your drum and glue them onto either side. Be sure that they look like they're very even with each other. Do this for all 3 drums, and you're set. And if the pieces come up a little over the drum, all you got to do is just grab your knife and just cut those bars holding it up, and just fold them right over and glue them into place. Okay, now that we got our drums done, we need to go back to our chest piece, because now we need to find a way to attach it to the pole. And that proved to be an interesting challenge because, as you can see, the top part of the shield has to be in front of the bottom drum. What I did was I got the drum and I put it on my PVC pipe. Then I grabbed my shield and I measured the gap between. For me, it came to a little over 5 inches. Now, of course, I had to take into account the fact that the pipe I'm using is 1.5 inches in width. And of course, I have to have some come behind it, that way it'll hold properly. I recommend that you try and use a box that's made out of double perforated cardboard. I cut off all the side pieces, then I separated it from its connection, and I carefully checked where the folds would be, and by sheer luck, it was perfect. Now for this, you're virtually on your own as to how to do it, because unfortunately, with me, I had a large bowl, and you guys may not have the same thing, so I can't give you any measurements for this. So, sorry. I checked once again to see how well it would fit with the PVC, and I determined the best measurement for the top and the bottom piece that's going to connect to the PVC pipe would be 8 inches. It never hurts to have a little extra just in case. I measured each end to 8 inches and cut it off. Next, I measured the end to 1.5 inches and drew a line there. And then I drew another line 2 inches down from that one. I repeated the process on the other side. And next, I grabbed a spare piece of PVC and put it in the center. I grabbed my carpenter square and checked both sides to make them as even as possible, which in my case was about roughly almost 2.5 inches on either side. Once I determined that, I grabbed my black marker and traced a circle around the PVC. And then I cut it out. Now we'll have to repeat the process on the other side. However, it's a little tricky to try to get it in just the right place. But I found a way that would make it a little bit easier. What I did was I grabbed the PVC and jammed it all the way through the hole, and then I lined it up just like this. Of course, I checked the measurements multiple times, and when they were the same, I traced it out, and then I cut it out. And I pushed the PVC through just to make sure. And most people would be satisfied with that. However, I wanted to strengthen this a little bit more. So I basically grabbed 2 more pieces of double perforated cardboard. I put one underneath the top piece. I traced the exact length and the circle. Then I cut it to shape and I cut out the circle. Once you do that, repeat the process one more time. Next, grab your 2 other pieces and line them up. Now, I'm sure you noticed that the inner pieces are not the same width as the outer pieces, but that works even better because this way, you can actually determine exactly the right method by simply doing this. Grab your marker and trace the outer edge, and then grab your glue gun and glue it into place. Repeat the process one more time. After that, put a good dab of glue on the bottom edge of the inside piece and fold it up. Do the same to the other side. Then grab your spare piece of PVC, jam them through both holes, and line them up where they're perfectly level. Be sure to add an extra layer of glue on the edges for good measure. Once the glue is dry, grab another piece of double perforated cardboard and measure it to the exact width and length of our little stand here and glue it into place. Okay, now we got the top, the bottom, and the center piece right where we want it. Now we need to put up some side pieces. Once again, grab some double perforated cardboard and cut it to the same length of the center piece and glue it into place. Now, while doing this, I learned that the PVC pipe is a little bit far back and a little too obvious. And it's going to look funny if you don't have the sides and the top and the bottom go all the way back. So what I did was I just basically cut the side pieces to a good length that I was satisfied with, and then I just cut 2 more pieces for the top and glued them into place. And now, the moment of truth. We're going to attach our box to our shield. What we do is we get our shield, we turn it over. After that, check it, measure it to make sure it's even on both sides, then mark it on the back. Then we get our hot glue, put a hefty amount on there, and then glue it into place. Be sure to add an extra layer of glue on the edges for good measure. Let it dry overnight, and now we come to the real fun part, and that would be making the drill that sits at the end of the spear. This one proved to be an interesting challenge because trying to come up with the best way to do it, well, that was pretty interesting because it took a little trial and error, but I came up with a solution. I created a template that would serve as the base for the drill itself, and I created another template which will sit on like so. I took my template, traced and cut it out, and I traced and cut out 2 of those smaller pieces. I located the center and glued one of them on one side. When the one side had set, I put a little bit more glue on either side. That way it would hold a lot better. Because for something like this, you definitely want to make sure it doesn't come loose. Now that I had that one side done, I had to figure out how am I going to put the other side on, because obviously in order to do it, I would have to press the triangle piece onto the main piece, but since I got one side glued in, how am I going to do that? Well, it's quite simple, really. I just pulled out a small cardboard box that I wasn't using. I grabbed my knife and cut 2 slots out. Then I just stuck the drill piece in, flat side facing up. Then I glued the other side on. Once the glue is dry, you want to check the drill and make sure it's even. If by some chance it turns out it's not even, it's a real simple fix. All you got to do is just mark it at a level pace and cut it off with the utility knife. And there's also a chance that the shaft of the drill might not necessarily fit inside your PVC pipe. If it doesn't, all you got to do is just Measure to roughly where you need to cut and just shave it up only so far. For me, I stopped it right about here. Now, so far, our drill is looking really good, but it needs a few final touches. Now, it all depends what you want to do. For some, you might want to go with the idea of making it look, well, basically like the basic drill that it was in the series on the spear. However, I wanted to make it look more like the drill at the end of the Dragonzord's tail. Now, this proved to be a little tricky because obviously trying to create like cylinder pieces in between the blades, well, that was a little difficult because one, I am no good at doing that. And there's more than one way to do this, I suppose, if you're good at measuring, which I am not. So I had to find a way to make it simple, direct, and effective. What I did was I created a template that was basically a triangular shape that was stretched all the way from the tip to the bottom. I traced it and cut it out 4 times. Next, I grabbed my trusty dowel and I rolled it right in the center. I also used a pencil for some of those narrow gaps. One note, when you cut these out, make sure the perforations are vertical, not horizontal, because it makes it a lot easier to roll them this way. And considering the size of these pieces, you may not necessarily have a piece of cardboard that's, one whole piece. You might have one with a bend in it. If you don't have anything that big, don't worry about it. I didn't have ones that were big enough, and it worked out just fine. You just got to roll it, and it evens out that bend perfectly. After that, you want to check and make sure that it fits just right. After I determined where I want it, I got my marker and I marked where they were. Next, get your glue gun and glue the edges down. After you got it down, add another layer of glue to strengthen it. Repeat the process 4 more times. And our drill is starting to really take shape now. And now we move on to the bottom of the drill. Once again, I wanted to go with what the Dragonzord's drill looked like on its tail and not on the spear, because it gave it a much better look. And as you can tell, it's kind of a semi-cylinder shape. And, well, I never done this before, so it was a real learning curve. What I did was I made a template and I cut out 4 pieces shaped like this. And I rolled the perforations and crumpled it every which way I could think of, so it would curve in every direction. Then I glued all 4 of them in place right underneath the cones. After they were dry, I grabbed a small piece of duct tape and bolt them close. Next, I grabbed a small piece of cardboard and stuck it right in between the gap, marked it off with a marker, then I cut it out. After that, grab your hot glue gun and glue them into place. Repeat the process 3 more times. After the glue dries, remove the duct tape that's holding the bottom and glue that into place. Then put the duct tape back in just to make sure it stays shut. Repeat the process 3 more times, and you got the bottom part of the drill set. Okay, now that we got all that built, now we can move on to the pole. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to paint it. Now, you could wrap it with duct tape or electrical tape, but I wanted to try something a little new. So, I decided to paint it. And what I did was this. As I was going along, I marked exactly where it's going to attach to the feet, as well as the drums, and of course, the chest piece. As you can see here, I marked exactly where the lines meet. After I did that, I grabbed some painter's tape and covered the areas that I did not want to be painted. Once I did that, I took it out to my garage, I grabbed some sandpaper, and scoured the parts that I wanted to paint. The reason I'm doing this is so the paint will stick better to the pole. After that, I wiped it down with a rag, and then I grabbed my can of spray paint, and I painted. Once it dried, I took the painter's tape off, and that looks pretty good. Now, before we could duct tape the drums and the chest piece, we need to prepare them for putting them together, because I don't want to put duct tape on the tops and the bottom pieces that are going to connect to other parts, because the glue will not stick if you do that. Trust me, I've tried. It doesn't work very well. What I did was I just grabbed a spare piece of pipe, put it through the chest piece, then I put the bottom drum on, and I just marked the bottom of the drum as well as the top of the chest piece where I don't need to connect. Then I just stacked the centerpiece and the drums one on top of the other and marked them. Be sure to mark the bottom of the drums as well. And for good measure, I also marked where the drill is going to sit on the top of the drum. And now we're ready to duct tape. And now we come to the fun part, and that is duct taping the pieces. And first we're going to start with the chest piece and the drums. Now, before we could duct tape the drums and the chest piece, we need to prepare them for putting them together, because I don't want to put duct tape on the tops and the bottom pieces that are going to connect to other parts, because the glue will not stick if you do that. Trust me, I've tried. It doesn't work very well. What I did was I just grabbed a spare piece of pipe, put it through the chest piece, then I put the bottom drum on, and I just marked the bottom of the drum as well as the top of the chest piece where I don't need to connect. Then I just stacked the centerpiece and the drums, one on top of the other, and marked them. Be sure to mark the bottom of the drums as well. And for good measure, I also marked where the drill is going to sit on the top of the drum. And now, we're ready to duct tape. First, we'll start with the back. First, we'll have to cover the sides and the bottom, just like so. For the bottom piece, you can cover over the hole and just simply cut it out again. It's real simple. All you got to do is just grab the box cutter. And of course, you'll want to cover the inside. And again, you could cover the hole and just cut it out. Simple. For the top, just duct tape the edges and of course the parts that were clearly marked. You definitely don't want to go any further than that. For the inside, you can cover the entire inside, but I think if you only go so far, it'll be just fine because it's pretty difficult to try to get in there. But if you want to cover the entire inside, go ahead. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to move on to the gold pieces in the chest piece. We'll start with the center itself. What you want to do is just cut off some strips of gold duct tape and place them on there like so. You can do your best to try and get around the circles, but most likely what you'll have to do is just lay it on there, grab your utility knife, and just cut around the circles and fold it down. I would also recommend keeping the small pieces just in case there's a spot that's missed. As for the center circle, you can just duct tape right over it and just cut that middle circle out and just peel off the tape. After that, get some more gold duct tape and lay it right in the inside of those cross pieces right here. Now you have to get as close to the edges as possible, and the way to do that is to simply just lay it down right against the edges, grab your utility knife, and cut off the excess. Be sure to do the same thing for the other side. Next, grab some black duct tape and lay it over the gold that's in the cross pieces. Now for this one, you'll want to do this just a little bit differently. First, just line it up at the top edge, go all the way to the back like so, and you want it to go right over the dome just a little bit. That way it'll fill in those gaps. All you got to do is just simply carefully lay it down and just smooth it down with your finger. Be sure that you smooth it down enough where it shows where the circle is. That's going to be important later. And when you get it lined up to the other edges, if you got too much, just cut it off the utility knife. Do the same for the other side. Next, we're going to put some black on the green piece because, as I'm sure you've already noticed, there's black stripes in there, so of course we're going to need the black. Just grab some more duct tape and just line it up with the edges, lay it down over the top, cut around the circle, and now you got your black ready for later. After that, pull out some green duct tape and lay it right over the black right there. Once again, cut around the circle. Now before we could do anything with the green piece and the black gold parts and the cross pieces, we need to cover the shield itself. And how we do that is we just grab lots and lots of gray duct tape and we cover every inch that is gray. I recommend you work on the edges of the green piece as well as the cross pieces first. That way you get a much smoother cut. When you got those down, cover the sides of the green piece and as well as the top, the bottom, and the sides of the cross pieces. And then we come to the dome itself. Now this one's going to be a little tricky because unfortunately, unlike the cross pieces and the green piece, these aren't straight. They're curved. So, well, there's really no good way to really do this. The only thing I could say is just grab some duct tape and lay it down as smooth as you possibly can. If you could get some big strips and lay it down perfectly without having any wrinkles or obvious cut marks from when you cut it and slapped it on there, then you're good to roll. But that's a little easier said than done, especially when it comes to the part of covering the dome that attaches to the cross piece. Now where the black duct tape lies, it helps give an idea as to how to do the curve right. However, doing the curve with a single piece of gray duct tape is a little easier said than done. While you're at it, work on the back. And that would be the back of the green piece, of course the sides of the dome that are on the back. And you also want to cover the bottom part of the dome in the back. However, don't cover it completely. You're going to need to leave a spot bare. We'll get to that in a little bit. When you're done with that, cut yourself some half-inch pieces of gray duct tape and cover the circles that are on the dome. Be sure that they go all the way over the edges. If not, just cut some more half circles and just cover the edges the best you can. Next, lay out some pieces of red duct tape. Grab yourself a spool of thread and draw yourself 6 circles. Cut them out and place them right in the center of all the circles. Now all we need to do is the final touches. And first we're going to start with the green piece. What we do is we grab a small ruler, and we just lay it horizontal on the green piece, grab a utility knife, and carefully make 2 cuts about half an inch apart and peel it off. And you can repeat this process as many or as few times as you like. And now we're going to cut out the gold decorations that are on the upper chest pieces right about there. Now and there's a real simple solution. You remember how I laid down gold to begin with and then covered it with black? Well, we're going to cut that black out. I made a special template just for this purpose. Once you got your template cut out, just put a piece of Scotch tape on it and roll up another piece of Scotch tape underneath it and place it right on the black like so. Then grab your utility knife and cut right around it. Be sure not to cut too deeply because you don't want to lose the gold. And also, there's going to be a layer where the black pieces meet. So there's going to be a little spot here and there where you're going to have to cut a little deeper. But once again, be careful when you do that because you don't want to go too far. Just carefully cut it, and when you're done, pull off your template and carefully peel it off. Repeat the process on the other side. But of course, when you do this, you'll want to flip it the other direction. And now for the final touch. We're going to lay some black pieces right on the dome. Just pull out a piece of black duct tape, cut it into 5 narrow strips, and just place it onto the dome. Okay, now we're going to move on to the lower piece of the shield with the big letter Z on it. But before we could do anything, we need to measure and cut out a piece of cardboard to attach that lower Z symbol to the shield. And it's really quite simple. All you gotta do is just grab a ruler or a carpenter square and just measure out the distance between the back of the lower piece and the lower part of the shield. Cut a square to fit and then just glue it into place on the lower piece. And once that's done, we start duct taping the lower piece. First, we start by grabbing some black duct tape, cover the entire outside perimeter of the lower piece. I would suggest try to get it over the edges that go into the green spot that holds the letter Z, but don't go too far with that. Cover the sides right there. After that, grab some yellow duct tape and cover this lower piece right here. You might want to go with multiple layers because I found that yellow duct tape for some reason is kind of transparent. After that, cover the yellow duct tape with black duct tape. Then cover the entire back area with black duct tape. After that, grab some gold duct tape, cut out some strips, and lay it right on the Z. And use your fingers to try to push it right into the crevices so the letter Z will pop out even more. You'll have to go about this very carefully because you don't want it to look all wrinkly. I found that that's a little difficult, so I did the best I could with what I had. And, if there was a wrinkle, I would just flatten it out as much as possible. Oh, and try not to get it on the black parts. If you get it there, just grab your utility knife and cut it off. Simple. And once you got the letter Z covered in gold, cover that entire area, including the Z itself, with green duct tape. Now, you could try to cut small strips and lay it where it doesn't cover the gold Z. And if you're good enough to cut a complete straight line like that, then more power to you, man. Unfortunately, I wasn't. So I found that it was simpler to just grab some green duct tape, lay it on there, cover it right into the crevices. Very important, by the way, because you want that letter Z to stand out. If it goes over into the black duct tape, don't worry about it because it'll help even more because you want it to cover that entire center area. Once you got that covered, grab your utility knife, cut out the outside edges, and peel it off the black duct tape. And carefully cut around the letter Z itself and peel it off. And now we come to the final touches. Next, we got to cut out the black piece on the yellow part that's down below. What I did was I cut out a template to look like it does on the series, or at least as close as possible. I placed it on there, I grabbed my utility knife, and I carefully cut into the black duct tape. And then I peeled it off, and it looks like this. Next, I grabbed the other part of the template, and I did exactly the same thing. Now, when I made this, I made a little strip. That way, it'll separate. I highly recommend you do that. That way you don't end up getting a whole yellow piece without that black stripe in the center because you're going to need that. After that, pull out some red duct tape, put it on something that you could cut on. In my case, it's a piece of plastic. Grab your little half circle template, trace it, cut it out, and then just put it into place. Next, grab your hot glue gun and glue that upper lip right to the bottom part of the shield. Now, I found out that, sadly, this wasn't going to be strong enough to hold, so I had to add another layer. All I did was cut out a piece of cardboard that reached all the way to the bottom of the shield, but I made sure it did not interfere with the pole because, we're going to need that. So it would cover the bottom part of the shield all the way to the middle of that lower piece. And yes, I know, we already duct taped that, but it's really simple to fix. All you got to do is just grab your utility knife, cut it to the same size as your cardboard piece, and just remove it. Next, glue your cardboard piece into place, and once it dries, cover it with black duct tape. One minor detail though, before you try to glue it into place like that, be sure you got your lower piece sitting on something. That way it'll sit evenly with the shield itself. For me, I had it sitting on the two center pieces that are going to go between the drums. It proved to be the perfect height. And now the entire shield is complete. Now the first thing we need to do is grab some black duct tape and cover the sides of the drums. The idea behind this is that after we put the gray on, we're going to cut out the unique designs that are on the drums. The black duct tape will be those designs, and it'll be a lot easier to do it like this. Now, you don't have to cover the entire drum, not completely anyway. However, I did cover the entire top drum because, well, it's so short. Just wanted to make sure we cover the bases on that one. And you don't need to cover the side decorations either. After that, grab your gray duct tape and cover all three drums. Be sure to cover the side decorations as well. But remember, don't cover the circles that you traced because we need them so we can glue it all together. Next, what you want to do is add some green duct tape to the side pieces. All you got to do is just basically tear off a piece and just lay it on there. If it's not wide enough, just put a second layer to finish the rest off. After that, cut 2 narrow strips of yellow to go on either side. Keep in mind the sizes will be different for each one of the drums. Now we're going to get to the unique designs that are on the drums. I don't know if you could see it on this picture, but they're there. They're close to the top and the bottom of each drum. I created 2 templates to cover these. The biggest one's going to cover the center drum and the bottom drum, while the little one, obviously the top drum. What you want to do is just grab your utility knife, tape it down with Scotch tape, and just score the edges and peel them off. Repeat the process all the way on the top, and then repeat the process on the bottom, going the opposite direction. When you're done, it should look like this. Next, grab your 2 center pieces, cut off a big piece of gray duct tape, and just cover the sides, and then fold it right over the top and the bottom. I suggest you cut slits to make sure they fold properly. Okay, now that the drums are finished, we can move on to the drill itself. All you got to do is just cover it with gray duct tape. I recommend starting with the outer drill pieces themselves. Try and go something like this. Repeat the process till you cover one side of each outer piece, then do the same for the other side. After that, cut a small piece to put on the top, and be sure you cover the bottom of it as well. After that, check the very tip of the drill. If it's a little bare, just cover it with more gray duct tape. Next, cut off some more pieces and fill in the parts that are between the blades. After that, cover the bottom part. Now that we've duct taped everything, it's time to put it together. First, we're going to start with the shield piece. What we do is we lay it flat like we have now. We jam the pole right through the holes, grab our hot glue, and glue it into place. After that dries, we put the bottom drum on the pole, put a heavy amount of glue on the top of the shield right there, slide the drum into place, and then glue the top of that drum. Next, put the centerpiece on, add a good amount of glue on the top of the drum, then slide the centerpiece into place, and then put the middle piece on, and then one more time, put the centerpiece on, and the small drum. One key thing though, be sure that the decorations line up as evenly as possible. After that, we get our drill, slide it into the pole, and then glue it right into place. And then after that dries, we get the top of our base piece, slide it up the pole, glue that into place, and then we put a heavy amount of glue at the bottom of the pole, and then we jam it right into the base. And there you have it, folks. Now you have the Dragonsword Spear, and it looks amazing. Even better than I had planned, actually. Although I'll admit, it came out to be a little taller than I expected. But, I'm actually quite satisfied with that because, the spear was pretty large to begin with in the show, so why not? I hope everybody had a lot of fun watching this, and I certainly hope you give this a try because, for me, this is a huge milestone because to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever made the spear. And I hope everybody gives this a try. If anyone's ever given it a shot, please, by all means, let me know. And if you completed it, please send me some pictures or something. I would be glad to see it. It was a lot of fun making it, and I hope everyone gives it a try. This is Movie Fan, signing off.